So there are more interesting facts that have come out regarding the possibility of Lauri Markkanen being traded from the Utah Jazz to another team in the Western Conference. And while there have been some interesting rumblings about teams like the Heat that I find to be very unlikely, the Warriors seem to be the team that is front and center, and right behind them is the Spurs, but for two different reasons. We're going to talk about both of those today, as well as what should possibly happen regarding his contract situation, because we've heard that his representatives are in town and already working on that deal. With that being said, it's your boy Ray Tubes. Go and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications if you're into NBA content, and without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this one. Now, Tim McMahon suggested a possible trade that would involve Podziemski going from the Warriors, along with potentially some culmination of the two unprotected firsts that they have, one of their protected firsts. I believe they have 3 or 4 pick swaps that they can make, along with a little bit of filler just from a player standpoint, to have as a central package that would allow the Warriors to put something on the table that would at the very least make Danny Ainge and that front office for the Utah Jazz think about trading Lauri Markkanen. Now, the other half of things is the fact that Lauri Markkanen is gearing up for a contract extension that could be signed no earlier than August 6th. The issue with that, or the interesting part about that rather, is the fact that essentially if the contract gets done on August 6th, he will only be tradable after 6 months from that point, making it February 6th or the very tail end of the trade deadline for the 2024-2025 season, which means that Lauri might end up doing something interesting. That interesting thing would be quite simply having his agents hold off on signing on that dotted line and getting things completely worked out so that he cannot be traded at the trade deadline. Now, this does a couple of things, because obviously once you get to the trade deadline and players are available and you see certain teams either work out really well and really just need a little extra piece, or just see teams decide, you know what, hey, we're terrible, we need to just go ahead and blow this thing up, there's going to be a lot of movement, as there was over the past couple seasons, and Lauri Markkanen could be a big piece of that movement. Obviously, as there has been a lot of different players getting moved around this offseason, Lauri Markkanen has been one of those people that hasn't been expressively just thrown to the wolves, but he has been in a lot of trade scenarios. For that reason, I think that it is highly likely that he would want to go ahead and exclude himself from that, and by signing his contract a little bit later, that would move his official possibility or potential trade deadline for himself as a player beyond the actual trade deadline of the season, meaning he could only be traded after the season concludes. But by that time, why would you trade him when you were already a bad team? You lost enough games to get potentially a top 5 pick, and, you know, knock on wood, because it's potentially a possibility that even though they end up being a bottom 5, bottom 3 team in the league next year, they could still end up against all odds not getting a top 3 pick, which would suck. But, you know, that aside, you could still be a bad team. You could still have a star player in Lauri Markkanen, pair him with a top player in that draft, along with the young guys having an extra year of development under their belt, and you could see a team that's a lot more interesting to watch, a lot more fun to watch, and brings a new energy to Salt Lake City. But that all comes down to what ends up happening at the deadline. One thing that is going to be needed to note is going to be if they do end up signing the contract on August 6th, and Lauri Markkanen is available to be traded at the deadline mid-season, teams like the Spurs are going to be really happy, like extremely happy, because something that was told was the fact that the Spurs, amongst other teams, were communicating the desire to wait until he signs on August 6th to throw all their chips on the table on February 6th at the trade deadline to ensure that they can not only maintain him for the single year rental that he has for $18 million this upcoming season, but also so they can have him for the foreseeable future as a big piece of their building blocks, instead of just having him as a 1-year rental and then he just goes somewhere else, because that's also a concern to have. Looking back at even the Clippers, who, hindsight 2020, Paul George is a little bit delusional about his value, but that's a topic for an entirely different video. They traded so much to the Oklahoma City Thunder just to get the man, only for him to walk in free agency and go team up with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid in the Eastern Conference along with the 76ers. So you can't allow for that to happen if you give up a pretty hefty price for the guy. So it is fair to understand why the Spurs and other teams would be like, hey, make sure he's signing that dotted line and then come talk to us then, because, you know, 4+ years of Lauri, we can make something happen. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's something that is important to pay attention to. It's not going to be the biggest thing right now, but it is going to be something that matters a little bit later on down the road. But that's completely in contrast to what the Warriors want to do, because they think that they can re-sign him if they can get their hands on him. But they first need to find a way to get their hands on him, which is why the trade package was suggested. Now, Podziemski is more of a prototypical point guard. Yes, he has the ability to score. Yes, he has a nice little floater. He can shoot. He can pass. He's not a terrific floor general, but he definitely has an extremely high amount of promise at the specific point guard position, which the Jazz have been sorely lacking in over the past few years. And they tried to make Keontae George that, even though he didn't play it in college, and it didn't work out well. Isaiah Collier so far in Summer League has been looking surprisingly well. He's been going a lot more in the facet of being somebody that can actually play the point guard position instead of being a turnover heavy prone player that passes the ball a lot but, you know, just can't get the job done. And he plays with a certain level of pace and control that is very impressive, along with his NBA-ready build, which I love to see. Now, seeing that against Summer League guys and seeing that against NBA full-on contract, paid millions of dollars a year to do this thing kind of guys are two different levels. But the Summer League is definitely a step up from college because these guys want to get a contract for somebody. These boys are hungry. For the most part, of course, you have a couple of players that are already on rosters, like I believe 8 of the players on the Utah Jazz team are currently on the Summer League roster, even though Keontae George and Walker Kessler finally got shut down for the remainder of the Summer League. I still think that it's going to be some wonderful burn for those boys. Regardless of this, Lauri Markkanen is going to remain a hot commodity until one of two things happens. He signs the contract on August 6th or past August 6th, or he gets dealt beforehand. And judging from what the news cycle is saying right now, the only way he gets traded previous to that is if the Warriors put the right chips on the table and Danny Ainge is forced to say yes. Now, Lauri has made it expressly clear that he wants to stay in Utah. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. He wants to be one of the building blocks. Yes, he understands what the rebuild process looks like. Yes, they're going to lose a lot of games this year, but he's here for it. He wants to be here for the long term. He wants to see these guys succeed, and he wants to be a big piece that helps propel these guys to that next level. But it's up to the front office to decide whether or not they're going to allow him to do that. Because if they don't, well, then you're going to be back down to developing a singular star and hoping and praying that the other pieces that you ended up drafting are solid. And it's the fact that you don't often get a star caliber type player traded to Utah to decide, hey, you know what? I like it here. Let me stay here. I'm an all-star caliber player. I can play for other teams. I can play for bigger markets, get more money, that sort of thing. But I like it here. Not too many players do that. Over the past 20 years, there's been really nobody. I think you would have to go back to the 90s to find anybody at all. So it just doesn't really seem like it's going to be very easy to replace Lauri if you are to trade him. Now, you could go 1-for-1 and end up getting somebody in this draft, but you could also keep Lauri and still be bad this year and still get somebody good. And instead of replacing Lauri, the player is placed alongside Lauri. And now you have 2 for the price of 1 instead of 1 for the price of 1. But I'm just a guy that talks on the internet. Anyways, with that being said, thanks for tuning in this video. It's your boy Wraith Hoops. Go ahead and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you're a Warriors fan, what do you think that an ideal trade package for Lauri would be? What do you think Danny Ainge would be willing to trade Lauri for if you're a Utah Jazz fan? And if you're a Spurs fan, a Heat fan, or any other fan, what do you think of the Lauri news that's been going around the mill lately and what we discussed in this video? With that being said, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Thanks for tuning in to this one. Go ahead and smash the like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and become a member to help support the content. With that being said, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.